My name is Jacqueline. Standing in the opulent ballroom of the city's most exclusive charity gala, I watched as my father, Victor, stood on stage, delivering his speech with an air of self-assurance. The room was filled with 200 well-dressed guests, their faces lit up by the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Victor was being honored for his so-called philanthropy and business acumen. He thanked his wife, Isabella, and my half-brother, Alexander, who sat at the front table looking as smug as ever. Then he made the claim, "This development project is built on land and assets that have been in my family for generations. Everything I have, I built with my own hands." I stood at the back, flanked by Mr. Thompson, the managing trustee of the trust my mother had set up, and Mr. Harris, a senior fiduciary officer. As the applause faded, I took a deep breath and started walking towards the stage. I wasn't dressed for a gala. I wore a simple black blazer over a white blouse and black trousers, my hair pulled back in a tight bun. Every step was a reminder of the pain in my ribs from the recent accident. Victor saw me first. His public smile faltered for a moment. Then he quickly regained his composure. "Jacqueline, what a surprise. I didn't think you were well enough to be out," he said, his voice warm but forced. I looked at him, this man who had made my life a living hell for so long. "I'm standing, Dad. That's more than you planned for," I said, my voice steady. The room fell silent. Isabella stood up and walked towards me, her smile fixed. "Jacqueline, sweetie, you've clearly been through a lot. Maybe you should sit down. You don't look well." I turned to her. "Isabella, I'd like you to explain to everyone here why you signed for certified mail address to me 3 times and never told me." Her hand on my arm went rigid, and she was speechless. Victor's smile vanished. "What is she talking about?" he demanded. At that moment, Mr. Thompson stepped forward. "Good evening. My name is Mr. Thompson. I'm the managing trustee of the irrevocable trust established by your late wife, Amelia, in 2010. Your daughter, Jacqueline, is the sole beneficiary of this trust, which you were legally obligated to disclose to her 6 years ago." Victor scoffed. "This is absurd. My late wife didn't have a trust. Whatever this woman has told you, she's either confused or she's been manipulated." Mr. Thompson didn't flinch. He opened his briefcase and laid out 3 documents on the nearest table. "This is the original trust instrument signed by Amelia and notarized on June 15, 2010. This is the property deed for the mansion on Pinewood Drive, recorded with the county clerk on August 20, 2008, 2 years before your marriage. And these are 3 certified mail receipts sent to that same address intended for your daughter, each one signed by Isabella." The room went deathly quiet. Victor glanced at the documents, and I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes. He knew those papers. He'd known about them all along. A tall man in a dark suit, Mr. Jenkins, a senior officer at the bank financing Victor's $4.5 million development deal, stood up. "Victor, is the property you submitted as collateral the same property referenced in these documents?" Victor's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Alexander leaned forward. "Dad, what's going on?" Victor looked at Mr. Thompson, at the deed, and at me. "That house is mine. I've lived there for 16 years. Mr. Thompson said quietly. "Living in a home and owning it are 2 very different things, Mr. Blackwood." Mr. Jenkins walked over to us. "Mr. Blackwood, if the property you pledged as security is held in an irrevocable trust and was never legally yours to offer, we cannot proceed with the transaction. The deal is suspended, effective immediately. Our legal team will be in contact on Monday morning." Victor's face turned as white as a sheet. Isabella turned on him. "You told me the house was yours. You told me the papers were handled. You told me there was nothing to worry about." I watched as everything my father had built crumbled before my eyes. But there was one more thing I needed to do. I reached into my blazer pocket and pulled out the police accident report. I took a deep breath. "You told me that my mother died because of me. You told me she drove out into that storm because I called her. You let me carry that guilt for 16 years. But the police report says something different. It says that you, Victor Blackwood, agreed to pick me up for my school play at 7:30. It says that my mother called your cell phone 5 times between 7:45 and 8:10. You never answered because you were at a business meeting and you turned off your phone. Mom didn't drive into that storm because I called her. She drove into it because you didn't show up. And then you blamed a 12-year-old girl to cover your own guilt. Victor's mouth moved, but no sound came out. Alexander sat frozen, his hand flat on the table. And then, to my surprise, my younger brother, Benjamin, who had always been quiet and submissive, stood up. He walked towards me, his eyes red. I knew not everything but enough. I knew there were papers Dad was hiding. I knew something was wrong about the way he talked about Mom, and I was too scared to say anything. Jacqueline, I'm sorry. I should have been braver. I should have been your brother. Victor's voice cut across the room. Benjamin, sit down. Benjamin looked at him and said very quietly, No, Dad. I'm done sitting down. Isabella reached for Benjamin's arm, but he pulled away. You intercepted her mail, Isabella. Don't touch me. Benjamin came and stood beside me. For the first time in 16 years, I didn't feel alone in a room full of people who had always made me feel like I didn't matter. A few guests near the back of the ballroom set down their napkins and walked towards us. Victor sat down at an empty table, his face expressionless. Isabella left through the service exit, and Alexander followed soon after, his phone to his ear. Mr. Thompson stepped forward and spoke briefly to one of Mr. Jenkins' associates, handing over a card. My office will send formal documentation to the bank on Monday. The county records are public. I looked at my father one more time. There was nothing left to say. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, my brother beside me, as the sound of the room murmuring about the new version of the story filled my ears. To understand how I got here, I need to go back to the beginning. I'm a night shift ICU nurse at a local hospital. I live alone in a small, one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint on the walls and a leaky faucet in the kitchen. I pay my own bills, buy my own groceries, and drive an old, beat-up car that barely runs. My family lived in a grand mansion on Pinewood Drive. Victor was a successful businessman, always busy with his deals and social events. Isabella was a socialite, always dressed to the nines and more concerned with her image than with me. Alexander, my half-brother, was Victor's golden child, groomed to take over the family business. When I was 12, I had a school play. I'd practiced for weeks, and Victor promised to pick me up. But he didn't show up. I waited in the school lobby calling his cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Finally, I called my mother, Amelia. She'd already been home for hours, thinking everything was taken care of. Without hesitation, she said, "Stay inside, baby. I'm coming." It was pouring rain, the kind of storm that turns roads into rivers. My mother drove out into it to pick me up. She never made it. A truck ran a red light and hit her car. She was pronounced dead at the hospital that night. When Victor arrived at the hospital, he stood over me and said, "Your mother drove out in that storm because of you." Those words haunted me for years. 2 years later, Isabella entered our lives. She was charming at first, bringing me gifts and telling me I had my mother's eyes. But within a year, she and Victor were married, and slowly, everything that had been my mother's started to disappear. My mother's portrait over the fireplace was replaced by a modern art piece. The piano she used to play was sold. And one day, when I came home from school, my things had been moved to a small, dusty attic room. Isabella said it would be more private for me. I asked Victor once if my mother had left any papers or documents. He looked at me with cold eyes and said, "Your mother left nothing but debt." I cleaned it up. Don't bring her up again. I believed him. I spent the next 16 years trying to be a good daughter, trying to earn their love. I turned down a scholarship to a prestigious nursing school and went to a cheaper one instead because Victor said I didn't have the potential. Then, a few months ago, I was in a car accident on my way home from work. I was in a coma for 3 weeks. When I woke up, the hospital room was empty, except for a note on my bedside table. It was from Victor. "Jacqueline, we decided to stop covering your medical expenses. Your brothers agree it's time you handle things on your own. Good luck, Dad. I read the note over and over again, and then I cried. I realized that they had never really cared about me. A week before the accident, while packing some old things from my apartment, I found a torn envelope at the bottom of a box. It had my name on it and a logo of a financial firm I didn't recognize. I tossed it aside, thinking it was junk mail. After I woke up, I tried to call my family. Alexander's number was blocked. When I called the house, Isabella answered. She said they thought it was best for me to stand on my own 2 feet, that I was 28 years old and should stop relying on them. The hospital bill was over $187,000. After insurance, I was left with a personal liability of about $43,000. My savings account had only $6,200. I was at my lowest point. Then, one night, Benjamin called me from a number I didn't recognize. He was whispering, saying that Dad had put a tracker on his phone. He told me that before Grandma died, she had told him that Mom had left something for me. He said he'd found papers in Dad's office once, papers with a logo of a trust company. He said Dad caught him looking and threatened to cut him off if he ever mentioned it again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I Googled every variation of the trust company name I could think of. Finally, I found it: Pinewood Trust and Fiduciary Services. I called them the next morning. A receptionist answered, and when I told her my name, she put me on hold. Then, a man's voice came on the line. Miss Blackwood, my name is Mr. Thompson. I'm the managing trustee of the Amelia Blackwood Irrevocable Trust. I've been trying to reach you for 3 years. We sent certified mail to your father's address, but Isabella signed for them, and you never responded. 2 days later, Mr. Thompson and Mr. Harris came to my hospital room. They told me that my mother had established the trust in 2010, funded by my maternal grandmother. I was the sole beneficiary. The trust included an investment account currently valued at approximately $1 million and the deed to the mansion on Pinewood Drive. My mother had purchased the house in 2008, 2 years before she married Victor, using funds from her family inheritance. A prenuptial agreement kept it as separate property. Victor had been living in the house for 16 years, but he had never owned it. I was in shock. I realized that my mother had loved me enough to plan for my future, even from the grave. And Victor had hated me enough to hide it. Mr. Thompson gave me an invitation to the charity gala where Victor was being honored. He explained that Victor had leveraged the mansion as collateral for a $4.5 million development deal. If the bank found out that the property didn't belong to him, the deal would collapse. I decided that I wanted to confront Victor in person. I wanted him to hear the truth from me. So, here I am, standing in the ballroom, having just exposed his lies and secrets. In the 3 months that followed, Mr. Thompson filed the formal trust transfer petition. The process was delayed by Victor's legal team, but the court denied their requests for extensions. By early June, I had full control of the trust assets. I gave Victor 30 days to vacate the mansion. The bank voided the $4.5 million development loan and referred Victor's case to the State Attorney General's office for review of potential mortgage fraud. Isabella filed for divorce, and Alexander's calls went unanswered. I sold the mansion in July. It held too many painful memories. I found a cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood. I went back to nursing at a new hospital where no one knew about my past. Benjamin and I have dinner every week. We talk about real things, about our hopes and dreams. He started therapy, and so have I. On my bookshelf, there's a framed photo of my mother, smiling and holding me as a baby. For the first time in 16 years, I look at that photo and feel gratitude, not guilt. I learned that I'm not the story someone else wrote about me. I'm not the girl who caused her mother's death. I'm Jacqueline, a survivor, and I'm finally living my own life.